said stuff without a scare.
This defense sucks. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
One of the greats. Buffone was a boy. He was a Chicago Bear. Now at the barroom for year 9, knowing winning is the bottom line. John Buffone continues the legacy. He's got Doug's pedigree.
If you look at this team and this quarterback and this coach, if it's not going to be now, when?
And John does it with 2 pros, Alyssa and Danny Shimon. Buffone, 55 years old Bear, covering all the team's affairs. Buffone, 55 years old Bear, covering all the team's affairs.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55. I am your host, John Buffone, and for the first time this season, the smile on my face is authentic. Well, listen, I'm always happy to be here and do this show, but I'm never happy to talk about a Bears loss. So this smile carries double the weight. Happy to be here and happy that the Bears won a game where the following happened. Caleb was not sacked. In fact, he was pressured only once. Caleb looked comfortable in the pocket, a big reason why he threw 4 touchdown passes. And the defense, while not perfect, made more explosive plays than they allowed. All of that and more led to a 31-14 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. Oh no, you know what? Drop the confetti as I introduce our co-host. Let's celebrate a little bit. What do we got going on here? That's right. All right. Let's bring on the managing editor of the USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, Alyssa and of course, the talent evaluator from Shimon Draft Scout on YouTube and lead game analyst here at the barroom, Danny Shimon. Guys, yes, it's a little dramatic, but the Bears won, and we gotta go out. How do you get that confetti out of your face, Danny?
Confetti in my mouth. I can't talk here.
How you feeling after that win?
Well, I'm feeling great. Apparently, Aldo's feeling even better with all that confetti blowing all over the place here. But yeah, it was. John, you said it. It was a great way to see the Bears come out. You know, it was a team that the Cowboys who were coming in here riding high up. You know, off of their big win at New York, and then came in here. Obviously, Matt Eberflus was the defensive coordinator, so had a little bit more extra motivation for us fans and followers of the Bears, and they didn't want to see him leaving here with a victory. And I think the Bears came out, and I think first time we've seen a complete Ben Johnson, kind of schemed game plan there. Initially the first couple of games, you always saw the first couple of first drive, each first 2 games, the Bears marched down the field of those scripted plays, put it in the end zone, and then things kind of fell apart. This one, whether it's the Cowboys defense was a big reason to that. I'm not taking it away from the Bears, but it was a complete offensive, display out there at Soldier Field. And you mentioned, the defense coming off of their poor performance in Detroit, undermanned, losing Jalen Johnson for the rest of the year. Really, I think Dennis Allen, kind of challenge those guys and say, all right, hey, put your pride on the line here, go out there and put a better effort. And they sure did, and they came out with a victory. So it's hopefully a first of many for Ben Johnson, and we'll move on from there.
Alyssa, you've been doing this show with me for a long time. We haven't got to talk about a whole lot of victories. So how are you feeling after this one?
I'm feeling great because if I recall, we didn't do a show after they beat the Packers to wrap up last season. So we have not celebrated a win on this show since I think it was October of last year.
Oh,
So
man,
that's why we have the confetti. We gotta soak it up as Bears fans. We don't know when the next win is gonna come, but that was a satisfying victory. It was nice to watch the game and I feel like they were gonna blow it, which was a weird feeling, like in my gut. I was like, okay, wow, everything's kind of going their way. That like Danny was saying, this is the first time we saw the offense really gelling and clicking, and we saw what it's supposed to look like and what it will be like, hopefully on a consistent basis. And I was very pleasantly surprised by this defense because I didn't think that they were going to allow anything less than 30 points to this offense. So just well done all around. And I'm so excited that we get to celebrate a victory and not be all doom and gloom tonight on the pod.
Well, I think Aldo must be collecting commission for every time he puts the confetti in the air here, because, and I always wonder, like, for the people who, there it is again, for the people who just listen to the audio version of this show, they're probably thinking, what is going on? What are they talking about? But that's why you got to watch the video version, because then you get to see all these fun graphics and all the confetti and all of this that we're doing for a win over the Cowboys. But at any rate, let's dive into the game. Less than an hour after the final whistle, Alyssa, you posted your thoughts on Bears Wire on the biggest winners from this game. Can you present those 7 players for us? Then Danny and I are going to comment on them.
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say how refreshing it was to do this list and just do all winners after a win, which is not something I think I've done ever or in a long time at least. So I didn't think we were going to get there this season, but let's go ahead and we have to start with the offensive MVP of this game in Caleb Williams, who had arguably the best game of his young career so far. He completed 19 of 28 passes for 298 yards, and he tied a career high with 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, no sacks taken, and 142.6 passer rating, and he had 5 rushes for 12 yards. But I think the most impressive thing about Caleb's performance was the command and the confidence that he played with. The operation was smooth, the execution was efficient, and we finally saw him hitting on the deep ball. Although it does help when you have your receivers getting wide open, which was really nice to see Ben Johnson scheme up there. And he spread the ball around. All 4 of his touchdowns went to different pass catchers. And we've spoken about it on this show, and Ben Johnson has spoken about it. Caleb is making strides every week. And I think it's impressive to see how far he's come in just 3 weeks. Danny, what did you think of Caleb's performance against Dallas?
Yeah, you nailed it, Alyssa. It was the most complete, in control of this offense that I'd seen Caleb actually in his entire short-lived career so far, and that the confidence was oozing out of him. As you could tell, whenever he played these passes, even when DeAndre Swift threw that lob of a flea flicker back to him, there was no panic. He didn't just grab it, tuck it, and try and run and whatever he can with it. Stay back there. And threw that 62 yards in the air, that strike to Lou the Bird down the left sideline there. So it was there were still some throws where some of those outside the the flat throws were kind of hit or miss there. But yeah, overall, I mean, I'm not gonna say and pick apart his 2 or 3 incompletions, but it was just 142.6 QBR rating in the game, 298 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Fun fact, guys, Caleb Williams and Aaron Rodgers are tied for the league lead in touchdown passes in the NFL. So just an FYI there. But yeah, just a complete game. I think he was finally comfortable. I saw footwork in the pocket, accuracy. His eyes weren't dropping, right? Because he felt like maybe he just felt more comfortable in terms of the protection that was going to hold up for him. Kept going down. It was a nice shot where on that play to DeAndre Swift, where he dumped it off to the left side and Swift took it 41 yards. You saw Caleb using his eyes to maneuver the defenders of the Cowboys over to the right side, and then just quickly came back, knew where Swift was, dumped it off to him, and he had already kind of moved all those defenders over to that right side. Swift had nothing but green grass there in front of him, a couple blockers for a huge gain. So, growth is what we're seeing. We're seeing them keep getting better. Now we just want to continue to see that here next week versus Vegas, and then, keep moving forward and just continue to get better and better as the season goes on. And that's what I expect to happen.
Yeah, I for me, and I think for a lot of people, the score was going to be inconsequential because everyone was talking about they need to see something from Caleb against a bad Dallas defense. They needed to see something happen with the offense against this defense, because if it wasn't going to happen against them, who was it going to happen against? So it was a masterful performance from Caleb Williams and the offense as a whole. People talking about how he was dirting some balls, and yeah, he did miss a couple of the short throws, but I watched Patrick Mahomes miss a stationary Travis Kelce in their game. He was literally standing right here, and Mahomes missed him. So those are going to happen. So I think that you're starting to see the development of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams working in tandem, understanding each other, and I thought that there was really good play calling. They were able to run the ball later in the game with 11 straight runs. So all in all, I think that everyone picked up the slack, and you see a big beneficiary of that was Caleb Williams. And don't take my word for it. I believe we have some video of Ben Johnson evaluating Caleb's play after that game.
Yeah, well, when the offensive line protects like that, it's a lot easier to play from the pocket. I thought 0 sacks. We had a very clean pocket for the most part. That's a starting point. And so he's got the ability to escape and extend and all that. But, man, if we can keep him in there, our playmakers are some dynamic route runners that we can get the ball to him in space. And so I think he saw when he plays on time, he's trusting the hitches within his drops, and we can be an explosive offense that way. So there's a lot of ways that Caleb Williams can hurt you, and like I said, when we have pass protection like we had yesterday, that certainly helps.
Now, it's certainly good when you hear him talking about the offensive line blocking like that. But for my next winner, I wanted to stick with the offense. And I just want to know, Ben Johnson, where have you been hiding Luther Burden for the first 2 games? Because after being non-existent in those first 2 games, we finally saw how getting Burden involved in this offense can be impactful. Burden led the Bears in receiving with 101 yards, and he caught all 3 passes that were thrown his way, including hauling in that touchdown pass from Caleb Williams on the flea flicker trick play. Burden also had 1 rush for 7 yards, and we saw his versatility in this offense. And Ben Johnson this week heading into the game, he was asked about getting Colston Loveland and Luther Burden involved. And we saw that concerted effort this week. We saw Loveland get involved early before he left with that hip injury, but I think Burden was the big story here. And watching his impact in such a small sample size, it's hard not to imagine the Bears would want to get him going even more. Thoughts on Burden, John? Let's start with you.
So, yeah, it took till week 3, but let's not forget that Luther Burden missed a lot of time in the offseason. He was nursing an injury. He wasn't a full participant in a lot of these things. So maybe he's just now getting up to speed with a lot of this stuff. I'm very excited about Luther Burden because when you look at this receiving core, yeah, DJ Moore is still only 28 years old and he has, some years left on that contract. And of course you have Odunze, who's on his rookie contract, but you're seeing the next generation. They're reloading for the future. So Odunze is 23, Luther Burden's 21. And so you have 3 receivers, DJ Moore and Luther Burden and Odunze, who are all in their 20s, with DJ Moore being the oldest at 28. And it looks like you have a really good tandem coming up as far as Rome and Burden. So I thought this was a really good sign of things to come. I think Ben Johnson's going to integrate Burden into the game plan a lot more. You saw what he's capable of. For me, and as the eternal optimist, it can only go up from here. But once again, we'll see what happens. But I'm very excited for Luther Burden.
Yeah, Danny, what did you see out of Burden on Sunday?
Yeah, we saw why this kid was coming into the draft or coming to last season. He was projected as one of the first receivers to be taken in the draft, right? He was a first round talent, and for whatever reason he dropped to the second round. And I think it's taken some time. And for me, guys, he's just scratching the surface of what he can do. 3 catches, 101 yards. He made catches, like I said, down a football field. They got the ball in his hands on as a runner. They got the ball. There was that one throw that Keel made. It was a sensational throw where he feathered it over the second level linebacker in front of the third level defender, and Burden in that hole got it. Made a tough catch in traffic. This kid's going to get better and better. He's just learning his route running. He's just refining some of his route running ability. So until this kid gets fully up to grasp and gets developed in terms of route running and understanding of all 3 positions in terms of the receiver positions on offense, he's going to get better and better and better. So for me, he is just scratching the surface. And this is a kid to look out for. Wait till you see him in the open field with the ball in his hands, and they're going to get him the ball, on slip screens and bubble screens and stuff like that, where he's got the ball in his hands and there's nothing but grass and a couple defenders in front of him. He's going to make guys miss, and he's going to be a big play impact on this offense moving forward.
Yeah, and we have to also talk about the defense in this game, who had some big playmakers, and we have to start with the MVP, Tremaine Edmunds, which it's no secret that he hasn't lived up to his massive contract or filled the shoes of All-Pro Roquan Smith. So when Edmunds can have the kind of impact that he had on Sunday, it's nice to see him earn that paycheck. Edmunds led the team in total tackles with 15 and had 2 crucial fourth quarter interceptions, including one early in the final quarter when he halted a promising drive for Dallas. This is also Edmunds' first 2 interception game of his career. And we've been quite critical of Edmunds on this show, and I think rightfully so. But it's also interesting that Edmunds has 7 interceptions since joining the Bears in 2023, which is the most by a linebacker in that span. But Edmunds' contract is still one of the worst moves by GM Ryan Poles, given the overpay and the subsequent production and trading Roquan rather than extending him. But looking at this Bears defense and what they've gone through in these first few weeks, they need their leaders to step up, and Edmunds did that in a big way. What were your thoughts on Edmunds in this one, Danny?
Yeah, and I've been one of the biggest critics of Edmunds in terms of Tremaine Edmunds in terms of the signing and his lack of production or impact on defense. But I even tweeted it out on Sunday. I go, this was his best all-around game as a Chicago Bear. I mean, he was making plays, sideline to sideline, making tackles, making impact tackles. Obviously, that interception, the first one was a hell of a play where there was a deflection off of George Pickens' hands. He goes down and gets it. And then the second interception was another nice read of Dak Prescott, be able to drop back in coverage and make a nice pickoff. So definitely, one of the better games I've ever seen him play as a Chicago Bear. And not just the hope is, that he's seen that now, that he's seen it on tape. Maybe he continues that kind of trend, and that's the hope here moving forward, that maybe Dennis Allen has tapped into something here with Tremaine Edmunds and the way he's utilizing him and the way he's kind of stepped up here as a leader on this defense. And that, we continue to see that moving forward here with Las Vegas and the weekend, moving on throughout the season. So definitely his best game as a Bear. Hopefully he continues it.
Yeah, once again, this is a guy, and you guys have already talked about it, but this is a guy that's going to be compared to Roquan Smith, because a lot of people would think, well, this is the guy we got rid of Roquan Smith for. And of course, you look at the contract, and has he performed well enough to deserve that contract? And so this is obviously not going to erase all of those thoughts and fears as we go forward, but it's a giant step in the right direction when you have 15 tackles and 2 interceptions. So maybe, Danny, you alluded to it. Maybe this is Dennis Allen just tweaking things and seeing out what personnel he has and how they're best used. But collectively, it was a much better performance. But to see Tremaine Edmunds do that after coming under a lot of criticism, I think he even got banged up in this game a little bit and then had to come back in. It was a really good sign. And once again, Dallas has a pretty good offense. I know CeeDee Lamb wasn't in there, but they had a good offense. Their tight end caught like 500 balls, but that's neither here nor there. But I just think, probably a very good sign to see Tremaine Edmunds play like that.
Yeah, and another standout defender that I recognized on my winners list was Tyrique Stevenson, which was quite a surprise. So first, I'd like to thank Tyrique Stevenson for checking out Buffone 55, as he likely caught our critique of him last week and used it as motivation. Also, you're welcome, Tyrique. But all jokes aside, I think this was a big game for Stevenson. He set the tone for the defense and that team early with that early takeaway on Dallas's first possession. He also had a pair of pass breakups, and his physicality was evident all game. And, Danny, last week you were talking about the possibility of, Stevenson maybe being benched in favor of Kyler Gordon when he comes back. And I think this is the kind of game that keeps you holding on to the hope that maybe Stevenson can become that player that the Bears drafted him to be. But this is the thing about Stevenson, is that he's shown really impressive flashes, including Sunday's game, where he looks like the player that the Bears traded up for in the second round. But he's also the guy who, was allowing a perfect passer rating to opposing quarterbacks through the first 2 weeks. So I think we need to see more consistency from Stevenson. And the good news is he's going to have a lot of opportunity to do that, because Jalen Johnson is on IR and he's having surgery on that groin, and he won't return until earliest later this season, if at all. So there will be some big name receivers still on the schedule where Stevenson is going to have to be tested. And Danny, I wanted to go straight to you on your thoughts about Stevenson. I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah, I called him a problem on the Bears defense last week. I said, this is the guy that the teams are picking on. He's like that green light. Hey, go here, whoever's blocking. And just like Tremaine Edmonds, he made me, eat my words, this past weekend. And that's the thing, Alyssa, you touched on it, is we've seen his ability is being a ball hawk. I think he, if I'm not mistaken, he has like 6 or 7 interceptions through his career so far, short-lived career. So he's got the ability to make plays on the football. We saw that was a hell of a play where he just ripped that ball out of Javonte Williams' arms. Basically, that was a huge run for the Cowboys. That would kind of set them up inside I believe the 10 or the 15-yard line there. So that was a big play, turn momentum, get the ball back to the Bears, and they just drive down and score. So again, we talked about it with Edmonds. We talked about it here with Stevenson. The consistency is what we want to see. If this is the kind of effort they put in and week out, I think the Bears are going to be very, very good moving forward. But we saw the Stevenson in the first 2 weeks, and then we saw the Stevenson this past week against Dallas. Again, very talented receivers. I know. CeeDee Lamb being out helped the Bears, but George Pickens isn't some slouch out there, right? And then Tolbert, the other kid that came in, he's a talented player as well. So I just want to see consistency with Stevenson, get more in terms of his concentration. I don't want to see any more concentration lapse, and I think we can see his talents hopefully shine and come up to the forefront here.
I mean, what a difference a week makes. I mean, last week we were talking about what a liability he was. Danny, you were talking about the possibility of him, resurrecting his career by going to safety, which I still think is a very intriguing thing, but we're not going to talk about that today. But he comes in, there's no Jalen Johnson, no Kyler Gordon, and just his physical play made a difference. He welcomes contact. He obviously stripped the ball away early in the game, which was a huge momentum shift to be able, because the Cowboys are driving. He's able to rip the ball out and recover it, and the Bears take over there. So he played a very good game. Now, is that going to translate throughout the next week and the next week and the next week? I hope so. But we've seen some laps in play, but I really hope he uses this as a springboard, because they're going to need that because of the injuries in the secondary, and they need some physicality, but they also need someone that can lock down a number 1 receiver right now. So we'll see how it goes. But once again, just like Tremaine Edmonds, a really good step in the right direction. And here is what Ben Johnson had to say about Tyrique Stevenson's play.
He's always been a super talented player. There's a reason why he was drafted high. I think a number of teams really liked him coming out of college, and it's really just been a consistency issue with him. It's there are times where he looks like a Pro Bowl type player, and there's other times where he'll let his guard down just a little bit, and we can't have those snafus. But I thought yesterday he took a step in the right direction. He strung together more good plays than what he had so far this season, and I think it's a great opportunity for him to build on going from week 3 into week 4.
That was well said by Ben Johnson. He's going to call it as it is, which I love, absolutely love that about him. And so moving on to my next winner, and we're going back to the offense here. Early on in the game, it looked like, again, that Odunze was going to be the lead story for the offense. And I think he still was, after a performance that included 3 catches for 62 yards, including a 35-yard touchdown from Caleb Williams. And Odunze told reporters after the game that he abandoned the original route once he saw Trayvon Diggs trip up, and Caleb didn't miss a beat and hit him in stride for that score. And I think, again, we continue to see that connection between Caleb and Rome growing. And now Odunze has 4 total receiving touchdowns on the season, which is tied for the most in the NFL alongside Detroit's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Las Vegas's Trey Tucker, who the Bears are going to face on Sunday. So Tyrique Stevenson is going to have his hands full there. And while Odunze did have a couple of drops, which I think is an issue for him so far this season, the arrow is still pointing up as he remains the Bears' top wideout through the first 3 weeks. John, what are your thoughts on Rome and what you've seen from him so far, including this game?
Well, I love Rome Odunze, and I think that you're continuously seeing that connection he has with Caleb Williams. They have, I think, the best chemistry out of all of the pass catchers on the team right now. I think that, like you said, he broke off the route and Caleb knew what was going to happen there. So I think that they are building a connection, which is great because Rome's young, Caleb's young. That could be a connection for years to come as you bring along another young receiver in Luther Burden. So really excited about that. Yeah, there's a drop there, here and there, but I think that he is a reliable receiver that could eventually, and if not already, be considered the number one receiver for this team. They're using DJ Moore a lot more in the backfield. He's running the ball, the screen stuff. But Rome Odunze seems to be the one commanding the targets right now. So it's exciting to see because he has a bright future with a young quarterback as well.
Yeah, Danny, what are your thoughts on what you've seen from Rome so far?
Yeah, he's developing. And John, I'll go as far as to say that he is the Bears' number one receiver right now, and it's not DJ Moore. And I think Luther Burden is developing, but it's the guy that you could tell that Caleb has that trust in him. You know, last year you saw Caleb had the trust in Keenan Allen. Sorry, the veteran that went back to the Chargers this year, and he kept looking for Keenan Allen last year. I think that hurt Rome. I think this year now he's developed that type of trust with Rome Odunze, and I think we kind of continue to see this kind of relationship here flourish. And he is, for me, the Bears' number one receiver today and moving forward. So 4 touchdowns right now. They leads the NFL in terms of receiving catches from a receiver. So I definitely want to see continue to get some of those drops out of there. I know someone like that, he might have had a second touchdown. I think that was borderline in the end zone. But if he gets those out of there and cleans that up, I think you're going to see this kid just continue to blossom and grow. And again, for me, he is the Bears' number one receiver right now.
Agreed. And I think that, Ben Johnson has really helped him a lot, which we're going to transition to Ben Johnson as our next winner. He finally got his first win as a head coach, and it was well-deserved. This was the perfect example of a complete team win and playing complementary football. We saw what this Bears team looks like when all phases execute. We saw what this Ben Johnson offense is supposed to look like. We saw the defense, who were missing 3 starters, go out and stop a high-powered Cowboys offense. And Cairo Santos did not contribute any highlights to what was a rough day for kickers. So thank goodness for that one. Johnson said after the game and to his players in that post-game locker room, which you should go check that video out if you haven't, that he felt the team played great situational football and winning the 3rd down red zone in 2-minute battles against the Cowboys. And watching that post-game locker room video was enough to make me want to run through a wall. And it's clear that the players have bought in as well, especially after Ben issued a challenge to the team after last week's brutal loss. So it's exciting to see the groundwork of what this Bears offense and this team can be once Ben gets all of the pieces in place. But Danny, I'm curious, what was your assessment of Ben Johnson's first win?
Yeah, it was, I think, a way for him, like you said, early in the week, he challenged the players in terms of their practice habits. He went out to the media, but and some people, I think Grady Jarrett kind of took a little bit of offense to that. But you said it, Alyssa. They respect him. They know that he's got their back, and he put forth a game plan where the offense still has no rushing attack, right? But in that 19-play drive, the Bears ran the ball 11 straight times. Now he claims he didn't do it on purpose. He lost track of it, but he didn't just run it with DeAndre Swift or a typical running back. He ran it with DJ Moore. He ran it with Luther Burden. He ran it with Zacchaeus. He used all different Caleb Williams. So he used different ways to kind of get the Bears to start making some productive plays on the ground. And that's the key to him is like everything revolves around the rushing attack. So once the Bears actually fix their run game, whether it's get another running back here or help solidify some more of the offensive line, I think you're going to see this offense continue to take off. But that's the thing that Ben Johnson does. He can adapt. He can make things easier. And we've already seen what he's done with Caleb Williams. And I think the proof is in the pudding. And it's only 3 games. And I've said last week, I said everyone who was kind of getting a little flustered or a little nervous, by week 9, week 10, this offense is going to be much, much better than what we saw versus Dallas. And you're going to see that's all going to be because of the way Ben Johnson, the way he attacks the week of practice and the way the expectations he's putting on these players. And Alyssa, you said it, they are responding to him. They have bought in. And that's key for any young coach.
Yeah, for me, you had to have a performance like this against a defense like that. Now, progress is not linear. You're going to have more hiccups, and if they take a step back against the Raiders or down the line, Caleb has a bad game or they don't score many points, you can't be like, okay, that's the verdict. They stink. But just like this week, you can't say, oh, they're incredible. You have to take it one game at a time. But this was clearly a good indication of what they can be. It showed what the potential can be for this offense. So a really, really good sign for the offense, for the team, for Ben Johnson, who I'm sure is happy to get that first win underneath his belt. And I believe we actually have two clips. We're going to go to Ben Johnson talking about how Caleb Williams' play can help out his play calling, and then what the result of that win actually was, the video everyone's talking about. Let's roll them both, Aldo, if we got them.
Yeah, it's fun. I think I don't have to be perfect as a play caller, and I've always tried to be that, to where you get the primary receiver open the majority of the time, and I don't feel that necessity anymore. It's just he has a way of, if number one's open, he'll take it, and we're getting to where he's progressing to 2 and 3. But if we need to escape or extend that, yeah, I mean, it's his natural playmaking, and that's the balance that we want to strike, and that changes every week what that balance looks like. But I think we're really finding out a lot about each other, because he's learning what my expectation is as well. But I think he's doing a good job understanding when it breaks down a little bit what he can do to ad lib.
First home victory. You know what I got. Repeat after me now. Good, better, best. Good, better, best. Never let it rest. Never let it rest. Good gets better. Good gets better. And you better get better. And you better get better. Bears on 3. 1, 2, 3.
The first thing I thought, guys, is how did Ben Johnson get all those pre-show motivational prep talk speech? I'm like, how did he get his hands on that?
He listens. Big friend of the bar room, probably.
Yeah, he watches every week.
Yeah, that's the most emotion I've seen out of Ben Johnson so far this year. It was good. I'm sure that's been penned up for a long time. He's been wanting to do that. So that was that's good. That I love raw emotion like that. That's what I run on. I feel like a lot of players probably run on. So that was fun to see. He's calm, cool, and collected, talking about the process at the podium, and then when he's around the guys, it's just that raw emotion.
What was funny was that was prior to him coming out after the game and talking to the media. Because if you saw his post game press conference with the media, he's all monotone and typical Ben Johnson. We had no idea that had happened in the locker room. Right. It's like, imagine doing that and coming out just being like chill, talking. Like
I wouldn't be able to do that.
That's the thing, is it's one thing with this guy is like I've watched every single press conference he's had so far since he got hired, and there hasn't been a moment where I've been like, oh, it's kind of cringe, or I don't know if I buy what you're selling there, Ben Johnson. Everything he says makes sense. He answers every question respectfully. He doesn't hum and haw. There's things where he may not be able to give you everything, but he'll give you something in terms of an answer. And guys, all I can think about, and you guys will tell me, stop doing this, Danny, but could you imagine Matt Eberflus leading that type of a rally in a locker room with his growing the man speech every time they'd win the game? It was just night and day difference.
It's funny because my associate editor over at Bears Wire, Brendan Sugar, posted this compilation where it had Ben Johnson's video right there, his speech to the guys, and then Matt Eberflus's, and it was just completely.
Oh. Is it the one where it's
it was incredible?
Once you get it right, it'll be right. Right?
You see how hard he's trying, and everyone's just like stone faced.
Eberflus is always growing the man for some reason. We're growing the man. We're growing the man.
Great. Well, you know what? And I saw it all in the comments, so this is not an original thought by myself, but it's like Matt Eberflus finally found a way to develop Caleb Williams. That was good.
Bingo.
They figured it out.
And I think another coach that, deserves some accolades in this one, is Dennis Allen. Things were pretty grim after the defense allowed 52 points to the Lions last week. And I thought that, there was no way that the Bears were going to give up anything, less than 30 points. So again, I'd like to apologize to Dennis Allen, but also you're welcome. We talked about the defense's personnel issues, whether it's injuries, to Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, TJ Edwards, the lack of a pass rush, etc. And I think outside of the run defense, the defense put on one heck of a performance against the Cowboys, and Allen deserves credit for rallying his guys. The Bears defense allowed just 14 points to a Cowboys offense that had averaged 30 points per game through the first 2 weeks. Granted, Dallas did lose CeeDee Lamb to injury early on, but I think the fact that Chicago was able to do what they did and pitch a shutout in the second half is impressive, especially, and they also had the 4 takeaways on the afternoon that were just huge. There's still room for improvement with the run defense, the pass rush and coverage, as you have, guys, reserves playing in there because of the injuries in the secondary. But I think that this was exactly the kind of outing that the defense needed to get back on track. So thoughts on Dennis Allen, this defense, Danny? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I said it last week. I said he's going to have to go in there and challenge these guys and put their pride on the line and come back after that disaster in Detroit and somehow, some way form a defense that can be able to stop Dak and company. And yet I still don't know how he did it. I mean, there wasn't anybody different. Now, he did take my advice and he did use Daniel Hardy in there now, but he used him more as a like an off-ball linebacker, some defensive line. So, I think Hardy only played 13 snaps, but that's the one guy with Austin Booker out right now that has some juice. Now, he's not a down on defensive end, but if you can find a role where he can utilize his athletic ability and speed off the edge and create some pressure, that'd be great. Now, we saw Montez Sweat get a sack. I think we saw some inspired play from Grady Jarrett. But again, he kind of piecemeal this thing together. We already talked about Tremaine Edmonds and his contributions, and then Tyrique Stevenson, his bounce back game. So, Dennis Allen is a professional defensive coordinator. He's a guy that has had long-term success when it was with the Raiders or with New Orleans. So he could do it. He knows how to figure this out. I don't think he has the horses he needs right now with this defense, but right now, at least for that last week, he pieced it all together and he was able to hold that Dallas offense to 14 points. Now, the run defense is a huge concern for me because I felt like every time they gave the ball to Javonte Williams, he was busting off 5-6 yards run. So that's something that he's going to have to focus on here, moving towards with the Raiders and moving on throughout the season. But Dennis Allen, hats off to you, man. You did it. I still don't know how you did it, but you held that Dallas offense just 14 points.
Yeah, I've always had a lot of confidence in Dennis Allen. I just haven't had a lot of confidence in the personnel, and in addition to all the injuries there. So to be able to pull this off is once again a good sign. As people continue to get healthier, you might see Kyler Gordon back in there, TJ Edwards come back in there, and everyone continues to gel within this system. I think that you will see improvements. Austin Booker, whenever he comes back, what he's going to be able to do. So I think that there's reason to be hopeful about the defense. Danny, you're absolutely right about the run defense. That's a bit concerning. But I think this defense, as the year goes on, much like the offense, will get better because they're going to get healthier and they're going to get more in tune with the system. So encouraging signs all around, offense, defense, you name it. This was encouraging across the board. And Alyssa, like you said, we didn't have to see any like kicks because there were plenty of them blocked over the weekend. And that was not exactly something we've been a part of that with special teams disasters, you name it. There's been a year where there's been some kind of special teams disaster. So the fact that we were able to avoid that, I'm good.
I think the one coach more happier than Ben Johnson was Richard Hightower because his unit didn't, put up a big stinker up there on the field on Sunday. Yep.
Well, I mean, we're talking about all the positives out of this game. On Monday, Ben Johnson was asked about the play of left tackle Braxton Jones. Let's play that. And on the other end, Danny, you're going to break down some tape for us to let us know what the state of the left tackle is.
Very, very encouraged with the direction that we're going. There's still some work to be done, but I think I lump the whole offensive line together when I look at our rushing statistics. I think we only averaged about 3 yards a rush. We left a lot of meat on the bone there. I give a lot of credit. That is a good front. I mean, particularly those interior players are really good players that have played at a high level in this league for a long time. We knew that. We knew we were going to have our hands full. but yet we didn't run the ball as effectively as we're capable of doing. So I think it starts there. Certainly he plays a part in that, but he's also a part of the 0 sacks given up in terms of pass pro. So there's a lot of good, and there's a lot that we got to continue to clean up.
Take it away, Danny.
Yeah, and the thing about Braxton Jones, and this is a guy that I've said it before, like for me, this kid has been one of Ryan Poles' best draft selections. A 5th round pick out of Southern Utah. Nothing was much expected of him. Started all 16 games as a rookie. And yeah, is he inconsistent? Yes. And I think that's exactly what Ben Johnson's referring to. I mean, you see the highlights in terms of him in pass pro. You see then some of the weaknesses in run defense and run blocking. So I picked 4 clips here, and I want to show you 4 some examples of where I think Ben Johnson might be kind of scratching his head saying, hey, if we can get this guy to be consistent, we may have a really damn good left tackle on our hands here. First play here is going to be the touchdown to Rome. All right. The Cowboys show 5 guys in the line of scrimmage, drop back the linebacker. Dante Fowler goes off right into Braxton Jones's chest. He does a good job of putting his hand back into the chest plate of Dante Fowler and being able to control Fowler, and then also then using a wide balanced stance to be able to kind of thwart off his pass rush, giving Caleb ample time to find Rome, get the ball off as Rome is streaking down the left sideline for an easy touchdown. Is it pretty? No. Is it technique? Is it like picture perfect technique? No, but it's effective. And this is what Braxton gives you. Gives you some effective pass blocking ability. Is it that's but where he misses it is you'll see a series where he's doing it something like that, and then you'll see another series where he totally whiffs on a pass rusher. The area where, for me at least, where I think he's got to get even more better at or more consistent at is his run blocking. In this next clip here, we're going to show you here where this is where he gets a chip here from Durham Smythe, and he goes out and I'm sorry, this is the different clip. All right, this is the clip where he reaches the second level linebacker, and that's the former Bear linebacker.
Sanborn.
Sanborn, thank you so much, Jack Sanborn. So he reaches Sanborn, but he doesn't finish the block, right? If he gets to Sanborn, which he does, if he can just drive him up the field or at least seal him off, the Bears block this run very well. They have a hat on a hat, and Sanborn makes that play. If Braxton Jones can block Sanborn or seal him off, Manangai's got a 15, 20-yard run here because everyone else is blocked. So that's where the inconsistency get. He's a 6'5", 300-plus pound offensive lineman, and you saw his ability to get out to the second level, but now he's got to finish that block. He's got to get Sanborn. He's got to either drive him up the field or at least seal him off and give Manangai the opportunity to go ahead and bust off that big, long run, right? So that's an area where, for me, he's got to get better at. Now we go to the next clip here, and I think this is the clip that I was talking about earlier. This is where Smythe goes and gives him a chip block here on Sam Williams, and again does a good job. Braxton keeps his hands on Williams, drives him to the field, but lets him go there, right? Lets him go. Doesn't finish the block. Finish off your block, Braxton. I think this is where the coaches are getting frustrated here because while Williams doesn't make the tackle on DeAndre Swift, but he's around the pile. So what if Swift makes a move, breaks free, and gets away from that initial defender? But Jones's guy has gotten away from him now because he hasn't finished his block, and he's around the pile, and he can make that tackle. So I think this is the thing where you got to continue to work on Braxton Jones and continue to get him to be able to finish those blocks as a run blocker. So now you can spring more runs, more bigger plays out of that rushing attack for the Bears. And this last one here, this is some of the positives of Shaw, right? We talked about his athletic ability here. This is where I think he excels at. Again, 6'5", 300-plus pounds. He has cat-like quickness out of his stance. You see him there excel to that third-level defender. That's the safety, Malik Hooker, and he blows him out of that play. Now, for me, Burden, if he had run behind his blocks, maybe taking the outside of Rome there, he could have had a touchdown here. But again, you see some of that enticing athletic ability for a guy that big to get out into that next level, into the open field. And again, this is where he excels at, getting out and getting onto these smaller guys and just wiping them out of the play and allowing his ball carrier to run behind him and make big plays. So the inconsistencies has really plagued Braxton Jones from the first day he came on to the Bears scene here, and he's been their left tackle, but he's not a bad player. He's a average at best, I'd say, left tackle in the NFL. There are some bad left tackles guys playing in the NFL. Just put on some Houston Texans tape and see what TJ Stroud out there playing left tackle for him. So, but Braxton Jones is not that bad. And I think Ben Johnson and some of the other coaches have also touched on that. They're saying that they want to see more consistency. Now, what's interesting is that the coaches have mentioned that towards the second half of the game, they see some of the lapses that I've been highlighting, whether it's on that run blocks or even on pass protection. So I think that's something that they're trying to see, what's attributing to that. Is it still him coming back from the injury? Is it something with terms of fatigue or whatnot? So I think, we saw a couple of glimpses where Theo Benedict was in there at left tackle. Now I know he came in to spell Darnell Wright when he got injured, but there was also some snaps where he took a left tackle. So I think the coaches are on something here. They want to see why his play kind of drops in the second half. But again, Braxton Jones for me has been one of Ryan Poles' hits in terms of a draft pick. And I think just getting him to be consistent, I think you're going to have yourself a left tackle you can win with moving in the future.
That's some great analysis, Danny, and I appreciate that. You're breaking down the film. I have a question that is kind of in that same realm, but not, and I'll leave it up to either Alyssa or yourself, is we talked about this being potentially a competition going into the year, but Ozzy Trapillo hasn't seen the field, and neither's really Karam Amagaji. Are you still hopeful for them? Is there something that could be carved out for them this year? I know you talked about maybe shuffling things up after the bye, but with this performance, is it dependent on what you see against the Raiders to think whether or not that's still something that you would pursue?
So in terms of me personally, I don't touch Braxton Jones. I leave him. He's my left tackle. I'm not going to go ahead and put Benedict there as a full-time starter, a left tackle, in place of Jones, because I don't trust Benedict to be that left tackle right now. Right now, talk about Karan Amagaji. He's on IR right now, so he's gone for the next 4 weeks. Ozzy Trapillo is a guy I have a lot of high hopes for. I must say it's a little disconcerting that he's been in a healthy scratch the last 2 weeks. Right, that's something that I can't really speak on. So I'm not sure. I thought, having some experience at left tackle early on in his career at BC, I think Ozzy could come in and compete at left tackle. If not, worst case scenario, he's your future right tackle. Some of the changes that I was talking about last week, John, and maybe we can touch on after the bye, is my concern. Believe it or not, I have a bigger concern at Darnell Wright, at right tackle. I'm real concerned about him. Again, another thing where his inconsistencies, right? You see some plays where Darnell Wright does a good job as a pass blocker. Again, I love him on the open field as a lead blocker and his athletic ability. But he's more of a north-south athlete, not a lateral agility athlete. That's why I've always felt kicking him inside the guard would probably be his best position. But so that's why I was talking about if the offensive line struggles continued, past last week and moving forward, a potential option I would have thought of would maybe kick because John Jackson for me is a guy, he had a better game, but he's still, for me at least, that weak link up front right now. So if you're going to go and remove John Jackson from the lineup, I would think about kicking Darnell Wright to right guard and start Ozzy Trapillo right tackle. I think that could be something you could look at. But coming off of that game they came off against Dallas, again, the running game was not good, guys. I mean, DeAndre Swift only had 33 yards rushing, less than 3 yards a carry. So I think that's something that Ben Johnson's continuing to look at, whether it's up front, the blocking, or if it's the running backs in the backfield. That's something that they're gonna have to continue to work on. And if you're not getting that movement up front, there are options there. But for me, I think Braxton Jones is your left tackle for this season. And in terms of next season, we'll see what the offseason brings, whether it's a draft or a veteran free agent. But I think right now he is your left tackle as long as he stays healthy. For me, I'm not moving Braxton Jones out of that starting lineup.
Alyssa, depending on let's just say, because the Raiders have a good defense, if something falls apart this week with the offensive line, would you be willing to shake things up after the bye?
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with Danny there. I don't have enough trust in Theo Benedict to go ahead and swap him out with Braxton Jones at this point. But I'm really curious to, we'll revisit it at the bye, obviously assuming, what happens Sunday in Las Vegas here. But, his potential, shaking up the offensive line. But I do see that Braxton Jones is probably going to be your starting left tackle for the duration. I don't trust Benedict enough. Ozzy Trapillo, they're really comfortable with him being on the right side. Do they move Darnell Wright inside? We'll see. But yeah, it's going to be a rough, Braxton's going to have his, he's going to have a real challenge in front of him with this Las Vegas defense. So, but I don't think so. I think he's your best option right now. And I think that maybe Ben Johnson has an eye to the future, and it's like, we got to survive this season. Braxton Jones is the best option at this point, but let's revisit this in the offseason.
The one thing that makes me feel better about this, guys, is Ben Johnson, right? We saw it in some of the clips I showed you, using the tight end to help Braxton Jones, help him chip. And then again, now going Caleb, right? Caleb, 2 seconds or 2.3 seconds in the pocket, get rid of that ball. Once his plant foot hits, his back foot hits, whether it's a 3-step, 5-step drop, that ball's got to come out. And I think once Caleb gets more and more comfortable, as we see him getting more comfortable in his offense, I think that ball is going to be out quicker and quicker. And again, you can chip, you can help Braxton Jones. So, the days of the 7-step, holding the ball for 7-8 seconds, hopefully those are gone. I think that's only going to help Braxton Jones and this Bears offense moving forward.
Yeah, it feels like this offensive line is kind of like a Rubik's Cube. Like there is a formula here that's going to work. Or is it just one click away this way? Is it one click this way? There is a formula there that I feel can be effective. And maybe they do think about it at the bye. But if they play well against the Raiders, maybe it stays as it is, and they just try to keep gelling as it is right now. Speaking of the Raiders, that's who they play next. So let's talk a little bit about that game. The Raiders, they've lost their last 2 after a week 1 victory over the Patriots. Pete Carroll is expected to make some changes this week, but really, what can he do as far as possible changes go? Their big horse that they drafted, Ashton Jeanty, Danny, he's having some struggles, just like I am speaking, getting past the line of scrimmage. Is that more of an offensive line thing, or what do you see out of his play?
Honestly, John, I've watched a couple of his games or the Raiders games, and I just feel like they're not utilizing him that much. And there are times where he's getting met in the backfield by a defender, and not just interior offensive line stuff. But there's times where he's making multiple cuts within that tackle box, and you see the talent you saw at Boise State. Now, and he's a guy that will lower his shoulder, Jeanty that is, and will run over guys, truck guys over. So I don't know if they're just trying to, he's not a bigger guy. He's not, not a big stature running back. So I don't know if they're trying to preserve him, in terms of, later on in the season. But I think he's a guy, if you give him the carries, and he's been vocal. Jeanty has been vocal to the Raider staff saying, hey, give me some more touches, give me some more carries. So he's a guy that I think could hurt the Bears, especially if that run defense is not up to par as it wasn't apparently last week versus Javonte Williams. So that's something that they're gonna have to concentrate on. But the Raiders have weapons on offense, guys, and right now they're more of a passing threat team than they are a running team. Again, mainly because they're not giving Jeanty that many carries. So this is something where again, that secondary, that pass rush, we're gonna have to come up to play here, and hopefully, Dennis Allen can do another, get back into his bag of tricks and pull up another defensive effort where they can, at least stop these guys, slow them down a little bit, because they do have talent with that tight end, and we've seen that receiver, and like I said, at Jeanty at running back.
Alyssa, it's the Raiders rushing attack versus the Bears rush defense. It's the stoppable force versus the movable object, potentially. How do you think that they fare against the Raiders running attack if they decide they want to just feed the ball to Jeanty?
Yeah, and I think that would probably be a wise decision for the Raiders to do. But I think it's going to be the matchup to watch in this game, and I think it could determine, this could be the difference between the Raiders or the Bears winning or losing here. And I think that when you look at what Jeanty has had to deal with, this offensive line, he's just getting hit in the backfield over and over again. Like Aldo just had that comment that you had up, where you had 145 yards total and 145 yards after contact this season. So I think that there's an opportunity for the Bears run defense to get it on track here, especially against this Raiders offensive line. So we'll see. I think this is going to be the biggest matchup that we're going to be watching here. This will be key to, can the defense replicate the performance against the Cowboys last week? We shall see.
Danny, wide receiver for Las Vegas, Trey Tucker, did have 3 touchdowns. Can you tell us a little bit about him, or how the depleted secondary might have trouble with him going into Sunday's matchup?
Yeah, Tucker's their big play guy right now, right? I mean, they've got Jacoby Myers as well, and obviously, Brock Bowers at the tight end, second-year player, coming off a little bit of an injury here. But as Tucker showed last week with 3 touchdowns versus the Commanders, he's a big play guy. He's 5'8", not a big guy, 182 pounds. He was actually a 3rd-round pick out of Cincinnati in the 2023 draft. That a round later, in round 4, the Bears took his his teammate Tyler Scott in the 4th round out of Cincinnati as well. So we saw who had a better NFL career. But yeah, he's a big play guy. Last year his was his big kind of breakout year. I had 539 yards, averaged 11.5, almost 12 yards a catch. Right now, he's leading them with 145 yards. Or I'm sorry, last week he had 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's leading the team now with averaging 16.2 yards a catch. So he's a guy you got to maintain. You got to keep an eye on. Whether it'd be nice. So far, we haven't gotten the injury report. Obviously, today's Tuesday. The Bears are off today. The players, that is. So we don't have got the injury report. It'd be a good time to get hopefully a Kyler Gordon back. Get some of that secondary help back to kind of give you some reinforcements there in that back end. But yeah, between him and also Jacory Myers is no slouch there as well. And also, obviously, you got the tight end there, Brock Bowers. So again, they have some weapons on the outside that they could get creative with there, and obviously Chip Kelly calling the play. So for me right now, the biggest threat is the Raiders is throwing the ball on the Bears, and the Bears hopefully generating some sort of pass rush. And as you could tell with last week with Geno Smith, you confuse him, he'll give you the ball, so he'll give you opportunities to make a play on the football. So again, this I think is an opportunity for the Bears again to hopefully defensively come up with some more turnovers here.
Trey Tucker, 8 catches for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. So hoping that he does not replicate that performance against the Bears. Now, Alyssa, over at Raiders Wire, they put together a long list of players and coaches who have not performed well. Who stood out to you as duds on that list?
Yeah, it reminded me of my biggest losers last week, or it was just all losers. Outside of Trey Tucker was the lone stud from his list. But yeah, my biggest takeaway from my colleague Levi Damian's list was, and I talked about it earlier, the Raiders' entire offensive line outside of Colton Miller, the left tackle, was he called quote downright putrid, which I think that bodes well for the Bears on Sunday. Whether it's Ashton Genty, getting hit in the backfield over and over, or Geno Smith running for his life throughout last week's game against the Commanders, and the fact that he actually had to break it down drive by drive, like he went like that. That's how bad that they were. So for once, it's nice for it to not be the Bears' offensive line. But some of the other notable duds that he had in the last week's loss to the Commanders included linebacker Devin White, which perhaps that could open up some opportunities for the Bears' run game. Cornerback Caillou Blue Kelly, which could mean a big day for Chicago's whiteouts. And he also noted head coach Pete Carroll, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, and special teams coordinator Tom McMahon, which could give Ben Johnson and company the upper hand. But for once, it was nice to see another team when I was going through this and it not be us. Because I remember when I would just call out the entire coaching staff, which was actually probably against the Lions. But yeah, so there will be opportunities, I think, for the Bears in this game. And looking at that long list of duds from last week, we'll see if the Bears can replicate last week's performance.
Let's hope so, because if I remember correctly, Alyssa, you and I, whenever we did the beginning of the year predictions, you and I picked the Bears to win this game. Danny had them undefeated going into this game and then losing before the bye. So after all,
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, man. I'm going to tell you.
After this robust conversation with plenty of analysis and X's and O's and data and facts and all this other stuff, Alyssa, are you willing to change your pick from a Bears win to a loss? And Danny, are you willing to change your pick from a Bears loss to a win? I had them winning. I'm sticking with it. I had going 2-2 into the bye. I'll take that. I originally picked them to be 3-1. They were close. They blew that game against the Vikings. They could be that way. But if Bears fans, if your team goes into the bye 2-2, you gotta be somewhat happy about that, given what you thought might happen after that loss to the Lions. I have them winning. Alyssa, you still got them winning?
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with them winning. I mean, you look at the Raiders defense last week, allowed 41 points to a Commanders offense without Jaden Daniels. So I'm not predicting that the Bears are going to drop a 40 bomb or anything, although that would be a very pleasant surprise. But I think there are going to be opportunities for Chicago to replicate their offensive showing in Las Vegas. And I think the defense is going to be the key with like what we've been talking about leading up to this. They're going to need their big names to step up again, including Montez Sweat, and Tyrique Stevenson, going against Trey Tucker with that, who had a 3-touchdown performance last week. So I'm not going to predict another Bears blowout win, but I'm going to leave the door open for one. So I'm going to go Bears 34, Raiders 24.
How about you, Captain Negativity? You still got the Bears losing going into this?
Like things happen on when the Bears go out West Coast, whether it's San Francisco, or even in Vegas. I remember those days of Matt Nagy, where I remember Kyle Long hurt himself, and playing against the Raiders, and just weird things happen. Justin Fields, making some plays and then also getting annihilated. So the Raiders are susceptible in terms of their pass defense, right? So I think this is where Ben Johnson and, like you mentioned, Alyssa, in terms of Caleb Williams and some of those wideouts can make some plays here against this Raiders team. So if that defensive effort comes back that we had against Dallas, against this Raiders team, and I said, Geno Smith is not Dak Prescott in terms of, he'll give you an opportunity to get that ball and make a play if the Bears can get a couple turnovers here and then maintain, good integrity in terms of the run defense, the Bears can make some plays. All you got to do is just chip and protect on Max Crosby, whichever side he's on, whether it's over Darnell Wright or if it's over Braxton Jones, and give Caleb enough time to get that ball downfield. I think Bears have a really good chance of winning. And John, you're right. This will be a huge victory for the Bears to go into the bye week at 2-2. You have that momentum with back-to-back wins. Now Ben Johnson and company can kind of sit back and kind of self-scout and see where they can make improvements. And then I can see the Bears coming out of the bye if they're 2-2, kind of propelling that into more victories. So big game for the Bears. When we made the schedule, the prediction, they were 3-0. I figured there was gonna be a slip up here somewhere. So because all the funky things that happened in Las Vegas, I figured, give them that loss there. So, but no, I think the Bears have a great chance as long as that defense steps up like last week to come out of this game and be 2-2, which again, I reiterate, would be huge for this team going into the bye.
Absolutely. And I know all the stuff that goes on the West Coast and Vegas. And I said this before the season started. They got to start breaking some curses. I don't think they got to break them all because I don't think that's plausible, but you got to start bucking the trend a little bit. Games that you're thinking, that's the Bears can't do that because of A, B, C, and D. They got to start breaking some curses eventually. And hopefully this can be one of them where they just weird things happen. Let's hope weird things happen to the Raiders and the Bears come out victorious. Before we get out of here, we got a couple of questions from the chat room. Danny, who do you think the best team in this division is right now? Which is a very interesting question because the easy answer would have been Green Bay a week ago, but they dropped one to the Cleveland Browns where they looked like they were overlooking the Browns. They did not play well, and the Browns defense played really well against Green Bay. And to your point earlier in the year, whenever we were talking about Micah Parsons going to the Packers, you said, well, you know what? This team will go as far as Jordan Love takes it, which is still very true. So who do you think is after? And then you have Detroit beating the Ravens on Monday Night Football, which is a big win. And then what they did with the Bears anyway. Who is the best team in this division right now?
Yeah, like I said, it's Jordan Love. The Packers will go as far as Jordan Love goes, right? If Jordan Love is consistent and playing on a consistent basis and making those, get rid of those mental errors like the one he did against the Browns, where that interception that basically cost them that game. The Packers are hands down the best team. Their defense is for me one of the better defenses in the entire league. But having said all that, the Lions, my biggest concern with the Lions wasn't, the lack of talent that they lost. It was just, how are they going to rebound losing the offensive and defensive coordinators? And if the last 2 weeks have any indication, the Bears are one thing, but going into Baltimore and putting on that physical butt whipping on the Ravens and doing what they did to Lamar Jackson and those boys, to me right now, Detroit, back-to-back division winners has to be the favorite in the division, and I think until proven otherwise, defensively they don't match. I think as in terms of what the Packers have, but I think they overall as a team, I think even their head coach Dan Campbell, I think they are the class of the division right now. But Packers are right there. If they get a consistent Jordan Love, they're right there with them. And obviously, Minnesota. Once we saw McCarthy go down and saw Carson Wentz come up, I'm like, all right. Well, this is KOC's new reclamation project at quarterback. And what happens now? I know the defense scored some touchdowns for the Vikings, but you can hear it here first. I'm telling you, Carson Wentz is going to take this job with the leadership and tutelage of Kevin O'Connell, and he's going to lead the Vikings into the playoffs. I think we've seen the last of JJ McCarthy, at least for this season. So I think those three teams are still right now at this moment ahead of the Bears, but with Detroit being on top.
This is moronic.
Bold statements there. I like it, Danny. Bringing the heat. Alyssa, another question here in the chat room. Do you see us trading for a running back if we are in the playoff race at the deadline? That one comes from Ravi. I don't even know who some of the candidates may be. In the chat room, people talking about Breece Hall from the Jets. I'm sure that he's in his last year, I think, would be Travis Etienne with the Jaguars. I don't even know who all the possible trade candidates at running back would be. Could you see the Bears making a move for a running back at the trade deadline if they're, because it's week 8, let's just say they're a game or two above 500 at that point?
Yeah, if they're in the playoff race, which, I mean, that would be amazing, first off, considering how the season started, because when you look at this Bears offense, that's the one thing that's missing is that rushing attack. And like Danny mentioned earlier in the show, how much that DeAndre Swift was struggling and this rushing attack was struggling, but we still saw that passing performance from Caleb Williams. So I think that you want a more balanced offense. That's what Ben Johnson does. He wants to run the football. You know, he's going to run the football, even though they're not having that success. So if you can bring somebody in, I could see Brian Poles doing that. He's done it before. He did it with going out and trading for Montez Sweat to shore up the pass rush. So we'll see. It all depends, though. Like the question said, it comes back to if they're in the playoff race at that point, which, again, would be awesome. I'm not going to rule anything out.
Oh, for me, yeah.
Any shot they would do something like that?
I think they would. I mean, we've seen Ryan Poles, you know, he does go out and he does acquire players, you know, mid-season. So, but I struggle with, you know, he had an opportunity to bring in a veteran like a J.K. Dobbins, right, off the street as a 1-year free agent, and they didn't touch him. They weren't going to do anything with him, right? You know, Nick Chubb may or may not be done, but you know, he's carrying the rock there, starting for the Texans. So, you know, they didn't do that. So there must have been a reason why, right? Whether they believed in what they had in the room at the time. You know, if they're within playoff contention, you know, come trade deadline, and then there's a running back. Guys, Breece Hall, I love him too, but I think that's going to cost too much draft capital. I think where the Bears are not at a point right now where you can just give up draft capital. But if you can get a guy like, say, I don't know, no, the name I was kind of hearing was Rashard White from Tampa Bay. You know, with Bucky Irving taking over there, but you know, you see White, you know, he gets. You know, 1 week he gets like 12 carries, and next week gets 3 carries. So maybe he wants something more consistent there. You know, that could be a guy that if Tampa Bay is willing to part with him, that'd be intriguing because he could be a threat in the backfield in terms of as a pass catcher as well. So, you know, someone like that, maybe not actually Breece Hall, but maybe Braylon Allen, his teammate, a younger version. Maybe you can get him for a 4th, 5th round pick, something like that. I could see the Bears taking a flyer on that, but you know, they have to prove that first of all, they have fortified that run blocking up front with that offensive line. And now you go on, you're going to spend draft capital to bring in a young guy. It's got to be the right time, the right place, I guess the right player, and in terms of the price you have to pay for him as well. So.
Could you see them going and getting a rental on an aging running back like an Alvin Kamara, where maybe because of his age and his price tag, maybe you only give up a 5th round pick in the midseason to do that, or a 6th round pick to bring him in? Is it possible they could go after someone like that for the Saints, who are going nowhere? They're playing for a top 5 pick to probably get a quarterback in the next year's draft, and so one of their spendable assets may be Alvin Kamara.
Right. And again, what's the price, right, for a rental? You know, are you talking about a day 3 pick? You know, it's again, where are the Bears in the standings at that point? You know, are they Alvin Kamara away from making a legit playoff run? You know, that I really would consider. Now they restructured a couple of contracts, and they made about $8 million in salary cap space. So that's, you know, is that something that they're going to that they've allocated for future extensions or whatnot? We'll see. But they did do, I think, with Jalen Johnson and another player. They restructured their contract and fit about $8 million in salary cap space. So we'll see how that happens. But this is all null and void if the Bears go out and lay an egg in Vegas this weekend. So if they got to go out there, win this week, go 2-2 into the bye, and then they can kind of take a step back and see what they have there in terms of their options, either at the offensive line or in the running back room, and then move from there.
That's why I love this show, because we get so far ahead of ourselves with everything. Like we whenever the Bears are terrible and they had that historic losing streak. I think it was like week 5. We were doing mock drafts. We were doing head coaching candidates. We're going into week 4. We're talking about the trade deadline. We're talking about who they're going to bring in for a playoff run. We don't even know how they're going to play in Vegas, but we're doing all this stuff. I love the hypothesizing and all of this other stuff. So, but that as we start to wrap things up here, let's go around the horn. Alyssa, what are you working on over at Bears Wire? Are we on Article 9 or 10 today?
Definitely more than 10. We're over at Bears Wire. We're getting you ready for Sunday's game against the Raiders, with all the happenings coming out of Hallis Hall, the injury reports, which are going to be, I know all eyes are going to be on there to see if perhaps Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards make their returns this week. We're going to have all this game preview analysis and everything before, during, and afterwards. Hopefully going to be another Bears win.
And Danny, I'm sure you are scouting the college games. What are you looking forward to this weekend? A couple of good games on the docket. One that sticks out to me would be Oregon Penn State for the whiteout down in Happy Valley. What are you going to be paying attention to this weekend?
Yeah, Oregon Penn State's right up there, John, as is Alabama and Georgia, SEC country. I mean, those are 4 programs that are laden with talent in terms of NFL players. So it's the college football season is picking up, and just previewed my top 5 or 10 defensive tackles. Going to be looking at the cornerback position here soon, and also the offensive lineman coming up as well. So I'll look for that on Shimon Draft Scout as I drop that here within the next couple weeks.
All right, that'll wrap it up here on Buffone 55. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can watch us on any of those different outlets, Twitter or X, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, we are on it. Whether it's your first time, your 55th time, we appreciate you still sticking around with us. This is our 9th year doing this. I can't believe people still care about what we say. That's fantastic. But at any rate, for Alyssa Barbieri and Danny Shimon, Aldo working the confetti in the background one more time for fun. You got it on tap, Aldo. I know that you like to throw the confetti around. There it is. The Bears won, and they're going to Vegas. Enjoy the game, everybody. We'll see you next time here on Buffone 55.